You may have heard that arrma recently released the version 3 EXB Kraton, and there are a few improvements over the last model. But are there enough upgrades to make it worth purchasing that newest model? Today I'll break down what those updates are and if it's worth it. Check it out. So this is the version 2. I don't have the version 3, but I'm going to show you what the version 3 would improve on this older version. So I call this the version 2 EXB because it's the second version that they released, the EXB Kraton. I've also had the first version, which was pretty cool truck. This one's much better. And the newest one I refer to as the version 3 EXB, or the V3. But you might also hear it referred to as the V6 EXB, and that's because it shares many of the features as the newest version 6 Kraton. And that's because the Kraton BLX has been around a lot longer than this EXB. So it's all the way up to the 6th version. So if you want to be technically correct, it's a V3 EXB for this newest one. If you hear people say V6, it's wrong, but you know what they're talking about. So I can actually show you some of the upgrades on this V6 BLX Kraton, since a lot of them are the same as this truck. That'll give you an idea of what they look like. This is a stock EXB Kraton, so it's a good one to show you on. The only thing I've added is these mud guards and little chassis plate, skid plate underneath, but really everything else here is stock. All right, so looking at the EXB, the main and most obvious difference here is this body is clipped with the traditional cotter pins that go in, and you got to take them in and out. Looks like that. The newest version EXB comes with what the BLX has, this clipless body system. It is pretty sleek looking, as you can see. It doesn't have these bumps that stick out and these cords, so it kind of makes it look a little more clean finish. It's also easier to manage to some extent. It takes a lot of time. Sometimes it's hard to line up the holes, so I'm kind of torn. I honestly, it looks better to me, but functionality wise, it's not that different. So that's one thing. All right, another notable difference is this battery tray here, more specifically the straps. The EXB version 2 that I have here comes with these really pretty flimsy straps, whereas the EXB comes with these much thicker Velcro straps. The tray itself is slightly different as well, but not too different. It's mostly the straps that do a little bit more security of holding this thing tight. So that's one difference. Wouldn't be that big of a deal though to buy the strap if you have this older version. Another difference is on the underside. This I added on, but the older version EXB just comes with nothing on the bottom, whereas the new one I can show you on this notorious V6, but it's the same as the newer version V3 EXB that comes with this stainless steel skid plate in the back. So the EXB, the newest one, comes with that, whereas the older one doesn't come with anything. Minor upgrade. Okay, another difference that you might see is these mud guards. As you can see here, the older style one comes with, there are essentially two pieces, one flap here and then the side guard of the plastic part of the chassis. Whereas these, which come on the newest EXB, are integrated, one really tall mud guard that is all one part of this side flap of the chassis. And that's also taller too, as you can see, whereas this is pretty thin. Again, not a huge difference, but if you like it composite like that, that's part of it. Now looking at these ESCs, these black Spektrum Firmware 150 amp ESCs, to the untrained eye, you would say they look exactly the same. So what's the difference? Well, if you take a look at the link in the description of the video I made, where I compared the firmware on the two, you can see that actually this new version 6 firmware is a little better than what they put on the older version EXB. I've recently tested this and can confirm that it's still outdated on the old versions. So unless you buy the newest ESC, you're not going to get that firmware. So that is a more notable advantage. So far, everything I've mentioned on the older V2 EXB is pretty minor. This one I think is a little more substantial because that newest firmware, it makes it run a lot faster and cooler. So both of those things are pretty advantageous on an ESC. So there we have it. The newest version 3 EXB has the most updated firmware, whereas this old one does not. However, if you've got the V6 over here, the Notorious or the Kraton here, it does also come with this updated firmware. Lastly, there's some differences in the hub. So let me take off the wheels and show you what I mean. All right, so over here on the left we have the EXB, and on the right the version 6 Kraton, which is identical to the version 3 newest EXB. So newer on the right, older on the left. The older one has this pillow ball setup where you have this screwed in big metal circle where it comes in and out, and like so. And on the right you've got a much different hub where it's got 4 screws that hold this joint in much more securely, although it's a little harder to adjust and take in and out, I will say. But this older style is not as strong. It's still got these nice anodized bulkheads, the shock towers, the brace, the chassis braces, all those EXB parts that people like. Those are on there still. And there's not much of a change. So those changes I just went through are really all that I know about. If you know about some others, let me know in the comments. But as you can see, there's a few upgrades, some of them bigger than others. So the question is, are those upgrades worth it? At the time of this video, which is March 2025, arrma lists the newest version EXB at $799. So that's a chunk of change, $800 for this newest version. arrma recently raised their price. I think it was $750 before, but even there. So you got to ask yourself, are these upgrades that I mentioned today worth $800? So with all that said, if you've already got this version 2 EXB and you're not super impressed by the clipless body, I don't think it's necessarily worth it to spend another $800 to get a slightly more improved EXB. If you've got the V6 BLX, you might like some of those added anodized metal parts, and I do think they're an upgrade and a nice improvement, but you also could upgrade this yourself, and that's another question for you personally, but for me, I don't know that it's necessarily worth it. So whether you're thinking about upgrading from the version 2 EXB like this, or you're thinking about upgrading your V6 BLX to an EXB, you can hopefully use this video to help you decide, is it worth it? Up to you. Let me know what you think in the comments. So all this talking about the EXB makes me want to go launch it. Let's make another video. I'll see you in that next one. Thanks.